I should have trusted my gut the moment Patricia handed me that crystal flute. The champagne inside shimmered under the ballroom chandeliers, golden and effervescent, but there was something wrong with the smell. Sweet. Too sweet. Almost like marzipan or bitter almonds. Before I go any further, thank you for being here. If you enjoy stories about family betrayals, justice, and shocking revelations, subscribe to the Concealed Bonds. It's free and helps us bring you more incredible tales. Now, let's continue. The Harrington Estate ballroom was packed with at least 80 guests, all dressed in their finest for Patricia's annual spring charity gala. My mother-in-law had been planning this event for months, and she'd made it abundantly clear that I, as the newest addition to the family, needed to make a good impression. I wore the dress she'd picked out for me, a conservative navy sheath that made me feel like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. I'm Sarah. I married James Harrington 2 years ago, and I've spent every day since trying to measure up to his mother's impossible standards. I teach second grade at Lincoln Elementary, which apparently isn't prestigious enough for a woman married into the Harrington name. Patricia never said it directly, of course. She was far too sophisticated for that. Instead, she'd ask, with perfect concern in her voice, whether I'd ever considered pursuing something more befitting the family's social standing. James stood across the ballroom, deep in conversation with his father's business associates. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, completely at ease in this world of wealth and influence. Sometimes I wondered if he even noticed how his mother treated me, or if he did notice, whether he cared enough to do anything about it. Sarah, darling. Patricia's voice cut through my thoughts. She glided toward me, elegant in a silver gown, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. I have something special for you. She held a tray with 2 champagne flutes. The glasses were identical Waterford crystal from what I could tell, but one had a small gold ribbon tied around its stem. This is from our private vineyard in Napa, Patricia announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. A 2015 vintage we've been saving for a very special occasion. She picked up the glass with the ribbon and extended it toward me. I want you to have the first taste, dear. After all, you're family now. The way she said family made my skin prickle. There was something performative about it, like she was reciting lines in a play. Several guests had turned to watch, including Patricia's sister Margaret and her daughter Ashley. Ashley. God, where do I even start with Ashley? She's 26, beautiful in that effortless way that comes from never having worried about money, and she's hated me from the moment James and I started dating. See, Ashley had apparently set her sights on James years ago. The family had joked about them ending up together someday, 2 Harringtons keeping the bloodline pure or whatever aristocratic nonsense they believed in. My existence had ruined that fantasy. How thoughtful, I said, taking the glass from Patricia. The moment my fingers touched the crystal, I felt it again. That instinct. That little voice in my head screaming that something was off. I brought the glass closer, pretending to admire the color. The sweet smell intensified. My father had been a chemist before he died, and he taught me young that bitter almonds could mean cyanide. This wasn't quite that smell, but it was close enough to make my heart race. Aren't you going to try it? Patricia's eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. Waiting. Of course, I said, smiling. I just want to savor this moment. It's so generous of you. That's when Ashley swept over, dramatically late as always. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and her entrance had clearly been timed for maximum attention. Aunt Patricia. She air-kissed my mother-in-law's cheeks. I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was absolutely insane. Her eyes landed on the champagne tray. Oh. Is that the Harrington Reserve? I've been dying to try it. Patricia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. This is actually for Sarah, dear. It's her first time tasting it. Well, she won't mind sharing, will she? Ashley reached for the second glass on the tray, the one without the ribbon. We're all family here. Something flickered across Patricia's face. Irritation? Panic? It was gone too quickly to identify. Actually, Ashley, that glass is Patricia started. But Ashley had already raised it to her lips, then paused, frowning at the plain stem. Wait, why does Sarah's have a ribbon and mine doesn't? The ribbon marks the first pour from the bottle, Patricia said smoothly. A tradition from the vineyard. How quaint. Ashley's tone suggested she found it anything but. She looked at me, and I saw the familiar competitiveness flash in her eyes. Even something as simple as champagne had to be a contest between us. That's when the photographer appeared, a young woman with an expensive camera. "Excuse me, ladies?" Patricia asked me to get a photo of the family together. "Could I get you two to pose?" "Perfect. Of course," I said, moving toward Ashley. "Come on, Ashley. Let's give them a good shot." I positioned myself next to her, putting my arm around her shoulders in what probably looked like genuine affection to anyone watching. Ashley stiffened but allowed it, too image-conscious to make a scene. The photographer backed up a few steps, adjusting her lens. "Little closer together," she instructed. "And could you both hold up your glasses?" "Perfect." In that moment, as Ashley tilted her head toward the camera and adjusted her hair with one hand, I made my move. It was simple, really. My glass was in my right hand, hers in her left. As I squeezed her shoulder affectionately, I smoothly swapped them. The ribbon on the stem pressed against my palm for just a second, and then it was in Ashley's hand instead. The whole thing took maybe 2 seconds. The photographer clicked away, oblivious. Ashley was too focused on her angles to notice. But Patricia noticed. I saw her across the room, saw the exact moment she realized what I'd done. Her face went pale, and she took a half step forward, mouth opening as if to shout. But what could she say? "Stop, that champagne is poisoned." Not in front of 80 witnesses, not at her own charity gala. Not without destroying everything she'd spent decades building. Our eyes met. I smiled at her, the same polite smile I'd given her 1,000 times before, and raised my glass in a small toast. Then I took a sip of the safe champagne while maintaining eye contact. I said. "Delicious. You were right, Patricia. This is exceptional." Ashley, never one to be outdone, immediately drank from her glass. The one with the ribbon. The one that had been meant for me. "Oh wow," Ashley said. "This is incredible. It's so sweet. Is there something special about this vintage?" Patricia stood frozen. I could practically see her mind racing, trying to figure out what to do. If she snatched the glass away now, people would ask questions. If she didn't, Ashley would keep drinking. "Ashley, dear, why don't you?" Patricia began, but Ashley had already taken another large sip. "Seriously, Aunt Patricia, you should sell this. People would pay a fortune." Ashley drained half the glass, then frowned slightly. "Although it does have kind of a weird aftertaste. Like almonds or something." I watched Patricia's carefully maintained composure crack. Her hand trembled as she reached out. "Ashley, perhaps you should." "Sarah. There you are." James appeared at my elbow, smiling. "Father wants to introduce you to the Hendersons. They're major donors." "Of course," I said, letting him guide me away. As we walked, I glanced back. Patricia was staring at Ashley with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. It looked almost like horror. For the next 20 minutes, I made small talk with donors, all while keeping Ashley in my peripheral vision. She seemed fine at first, laughing and chatting with friends, working the room like she always did. But gradually, I noticed changes. She touched her temple once, as if her head hurt. She swayed slightly, catching herself on a table. Then her face went pale. Really pale. "Ashley?" Margaret, her mother, was at her side instantly. "Honey, are you okay?" "I feel weird." Ashley's words came out slightly slurred. "Hot. My chest feels tight." Everything happened fast after that. Someone shouted for a doctor. Ashley's knees buckled, and 2 men caught her before she hit the floor. Margaret was screaming. James ran toward his cousin, pulling out his phone to call 911. And Patricia stood absolutely still in the middle of the chaos, her face a mask of shock. I stayed calm. While everyone else panicked, I walked deliberately back to where the photographer had posed us. The champagne glasses were on a nearby table. Mine, now empty, and Ashley's, still half full with that incriminating ribbon around the stem. Using a napkin, I carefully picked up both glasses and carried them to a quiet corner. I flagged down a server I recognized, Miguel, who'd worked Harrington events for years. "Miguel, this is going to sound strange, but I need you to put these glasses somewhere safe. Don't let anyone touch them or wash them. Can you do that for me?" He looked confused but nodded. "Sure, Mrs. Harrington. Are they special somehow?" "You have no idea," I murmured. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. The EMTs loaded Ashley onto a stretcher, her breathing shallow, her mother clutching her hand and sobbing. James stood next to his aunt, his face stricken. What happened? He kept asking. She was fine, and then… I don't know, Margaret sobbed. She just started feeling sick. Oh God. What if it's her heart? It runs in the family, you know. That's when I saw Patricia moving toward the champagne tray, clearly intending to dispose of the evidence. But I was faster. Officers. I called out. 2 police officers had arrived with the ambulance, standard procedure for a medical emergency at a large event. I think you should know something. Patricia's head whipped toward me, eyes wide. My cousin-in-law became ill very suddenly after drinking champagne, I explained calmly. Given how rapidly her symptoms appeared, I thought it might be important to preserve what she was drinking. For testing, the older officer, a woman with sharp eyes, immediately understood. Where is this champagne? I had the server save both glasses. Neither has been touched since Ashley drank from hers. That's completely unnecessary, Patricia interjected, her voice strained. Ashley probably just had too much to drink before she arrived, or perhaps something she ate. With all due respect, ma'am, the officer said, if there's any possibility of contamination or poisoning, we need to investigate. Better safe than sorry. Patricia's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the panic in her eyes. At the hospital, the doctors moved quickly. They'd been alerted by the EMTs about possible poisoning, so they immediately started treatment. Blood tests, activated charcoal, the whole protocol. I stayed with James and Margaret in the waiting room. Patricia arrived 20 minutes later, perfectly composed again, carrying her purse and a jacket. Any news? She asked. Margaret shook her head, tears streaming down her face. They're still working on her. They won't tell us anything yet. She looked up at her sister. Patricia, what was in that champagne? Just champagne, Margaret. Don't be ridiculous. Then why did she get sick? I don't know. Perhaps she's allergic to something. I stood up. Patricia, can I talk to you privately? She looked like she wanted to refuse, but people were watching. Of course, dear. We walked to a quiet corner of the waiting room. Patricia's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. I know what you did, I said quietly. I have no idea what you're talking about. The champagne. The ribbon, the way you insisted I drink from that specific glass. I watched her face. The sweet smell. Bitter almonds. Patricia's eyes narrowed. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then you won't mind when the police test those glasses. Because I made sure they were preserved. Both of them. Her composure finally shattered. You stupid girl, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? I saved my own life. And accidentally saved Ashley's, which is ironic considering how much she hates me. You don't understand. This was supposed to be. She caught herself. Supposed to be what? My funeral? Were you planning to blame the vineyard? Or maybe you'd suggest I had some unknown allergy. Patricia's hand shot out and gripped my wrist hard enough to hurt. Listen to me very carefully. If you say anything, if you try to turn my son against me, I will destroy you. I have resources you can't even imagine. I'll make sure you lose everything. I looked down at her hand on my wrist, then back up at her face. Let go of me. Not until you. Let go. Something in my voice made her release me. I rubbed my wrist, already seeing the red marks her fingers had left. Mrs. Harrington. The officer from earlier appeared. We need to ask you some questions about the champagne your daughter-in-law consumed. She's my niece, not my daughter-in-law, Patricia corrected automatically. Right. Our apologies. Can you tell us about the champagne you served tonight? Patricia smiled, back in control. Of course, officer. It's from our family vineyard in Napa Valley. We bottle it ourselves. And did everyone at the party drink from the same bottles? A pause. Yes. That's interesting, the officer said, pulling out a notepad. Because several guests we interviewed said you specifically presented 2 glasses to your daughter-in-law Sarah and indicated they were special. From a specific bottle. I watched Patricia's throat work as she swallowed. I wanted Sarah to try it first, yes. As a gesture. She's family. And the ribbon on one of the glasses? A tradition. From the vineyard. To mark the first pour. The officer made a note. We'll need to speak with someone from this vineyard. Get their contact information? It's a small operation. Very exclusive. I'm not sure they'd. We'll need it anyway, ma'am. That's when the doctor appeared. Family of Ashley Harrington? We all rushed over. Margaret got there first. How is she? Please, tell me she's okay. The doctor's expression was grave. She's stable, but we're keeping her in intensive care. The blood work showed elevated levels of several toxic compounds. We're treating it as poisoning. Margaret's knees buckled. James caught her. Poisoning? Patricia's voice was faint. That's impossible. The police have sent the champagne glasses to the lab for analysis, the doctor continued. But based on her symptoms and the preliminary tests, it appears she ingested something highly toxic. If she'd consumed more, or if treatment had been delayed even 20 minutes, he shook his head. She's very lucky. Lucky? Ashley was lucky that I'd switched our glasses. Lucky that I'd been paranoid enough to trust my instincts. Lucky that someone had tried to kill me instead of her. The officer's radio crackled. She stepped away to answer it, had a brief conversation, then returned with her expression much more serious. Mrs. Patricia Harrington? Yes? We need you to come down to the station to answer some questions. Questions? About what? I've told you everything I know. The lab fast-tracked the analysis on the champagne glasses. Both tested positive for oleandrin, a highly toxic cardiac glycoside. Lethal in small doses. The officer's eyes were hard. The glass with the ribbon had a concentration high enough to kill. The other glass was clean. The waiting room went silent. Margaret stared at her sister. Patricia. What is she talking about? I have no idea. This is absurd. Someone must have tampered with the champagne. That's possible, the officer agreed. That's why we need to check the security footage from the event. I'm told there are cameras throughout the ballroom. Patricia's face went gray. The thing is, the officer continued, witnesses say you personally prepared those 2 glasses and carried them on a tray. No one else touched them before you gave one to your daughter-in-law. So if someone tampered with the champagne, it would have had to be before you poured it, or... She let the implication hang. This is ridiculous, Patricia said, but her voice shook. I want my lawyer. That's your right, ma'am. But you need to come with us now. I watched as they led Patricia away. She walked with her head high, still playing the part of the dignified socialite even as her world collapsed around her. James stood frozen, watching his mother leave. Then he turned to me, and I saw confusion, betrayal, and the first hints of understanding in his eyes. Sarah, he said slowly. The glasses. You switched them, didn't you? I met his gaze steadily. Yes. Why? Because that champagne was meant for me, James. Your mother tried to poison me. That's insane. My mother would never, he stopped. I could see him piecing it together. The special champagne. The ribbon. The way Patricia had insisted I drink from that specific glass. The panic on her face when Ashley took it instead. Oh my God, he whispered. Margaret was staring at me too. You knew? You knew it was poisoned? I suspected. The smell was wrong. And your sister has made it very clear since the day I married James that she doesn't consider me good enough for this family. So you gave it to my daughter instead? Margaret's voice rose, shrill with anger and fear. No. I switched the glasses when Ashley insisted on having champagne too. She reached for the clean one. I made sure she got the marked one instead. I didn't know for certain it was poisoned. But I knew something was wrong. You used my daughter as a guinea pig. Ashley chose to drink that champagne all on her own. I simply made sure that if something was wrong with it, I wouldn't be the victim. James sank into a chair, his head in his hands. This can't be happening. But it was happening. Over the next few hours, it all came out. The security footage showed Patricia in a private room at the estate before the gala, carefully adding something from a small vial into one of 2 champagne glasses. The vial was found in her purse. Oleandrin, extracted from oleander plants that grew in the Harrington Gardens. A search warrant for Patricia's home uncovered a life insurance policy on James, taken out 6 months ago, that would pay out double if he died unmarried or if his spouse died within 3 years of marriage. Patricia was the beneficiary. They found her journals, filled with increasingly unhinged entries about how I was ruining James's life, how I was beneath the family, how she needed to remove the obstacle before I got pregnant and trapped her son forever. They even uncovered evidence of previous accidents. James's ex-girlfriend from college had been in a suspicious car crash after Patricia learned they were getting serious. She'd survived, but the relationship had ended. A business partner of James's father who'd opposed Patricia's control of the family trust had died of sudden heart failure that was never properly investigated. Patricia Harrington was a monster, and I'd been living under her roof for 2 years without realizing the danger I was in. The trial took 8 months. Patricia's lawyers fought hard, claiming contamination, accident, conspiracy. But the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the insurance policy, the journals, the vial in her purse. Ashley's testimony about Patricia's strange behavior when she tried to drink the champagne. And my testimony about the smell, the ribbon, the way Patricia had watched me with those cold, calculating eyes. In the end, she was convicted of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The prosecution successfully argued that my accidental switching of the glasses had foiled her plan but revealed her intent. They gave her 25 years. 25 years seemed simultaneously too much and not enough for a woman who tried to poison her own daughter-in-law at a charity gala. James and I separated 3 months after his mother's arrest. It wasn't dramatic. We both knew the marriage couldn't survive this. Every time he looked at me, he saw the woman who'd put his mother in prison. Even though he knew intellectually that his mother had done this to herself, emotionally he couldn't get past it. We divorced quietly. No drama, no fighting over assets. I went back to my apartment, back to my teaching job, back to my simple life. Ashley recovered fully. We actually became friends, bonded by trauma and the surreal experience of nearly dying because we'd both been caught in Patricia's web. She apologized for how she'd treated me, admitted she'd been jealous and petty. I forgave her. We both had bigger things to worry about. Margaret never spoke to me again. In her eyes, I'd saved myself but let her daughter drink poison instead. No amount of explaining that I hadn't known for certain, that Ashley had chosen to drink it, that it all happened in seconds, made any difference. She needed someone to blame besides her sister, and I was convenient. Sometimes I think about that night. About the moment I smelled those bitter almonds and knew. About the split-second decision to switch those glasses during the photo. About watching Ashley's face go pale as the poison hit her system. People tell me I was smart, clever. That I saved my own life through quick thinking. But late at night, I remember standing in that hospital corridor, watching the police lead Patricia away in handcuffs, seeing the destruction of an entire family play out in real time. And I wonder if there was a better way. A way where Ashley didn't almost die. A way where James didn't lose his mother. A way where I didn't have to live with the knowledge that my mother-in-law hated me enough to try to kill me. But then I remember the smell of those bitter almonds. The calculating look in Patricia's eyes. The ribbon on that glass stem. And I know that there wasn't another way. Not really. Sometimes survival isn't noble or clean. Sometimes it's just recognizing danger and making a choice in a fraction of a second. Sometimes it's being the one who walks away instead of the one on the stretcher. I survived. Ashley survived. Patricia Harrington is currently serving her sentence at the California Institution for Women. And me? I'm still teaching 2nd grade at Lincoln Elementary. Still living in my small apartment. Still the same person I was before I married into wealth and privilege and poison. The only difference is now I trust my instincts. And I never, ever drink champagne that smells too sweet.